How you doing?
I'm good. I was happy to read about your history and great to have that familial connection. And I'm sorry for the loss of your mom. I mean, mine died 10 years earlier than that, and I'm still, Sundays are rough because I can pick up the phone and there's, I can't call any of those folks.
Yeah, that's really the Saturday morning was always mine, so I know that feeling for sure,
Yeah.
for
Well, it's
sure.
wonderful of you to pay tribute in her honor by, to people that are dealing with, being impaired in terms of the way society accommodates people that are disabled. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. That's really sweet of you, and God bless you. That's a really nice thing to say. Can you hear me okay on your end?
I hear you great. How about you with me?
You're sounding wonderful. Cannot
Oh,
complain.
good.
Cannot complain. Well, thank you first and foremost. Thank you so much for taking some time to be part of the show with me. It means a lot.
Well, I listen to All Things Considered every day when I'm hiking. I have the NPR apps, and I listen to all kinds of different stuff, and it's just so great to be able to have the range of things that's covered, from all the local PBS and NPR outlets. So I'm honored to be included.
Yeah, it's great to have you on it, and it is a wide variety of stuff. And you've been going to a wide variety of places since Diggin' Deep came out. Tour now continuing into 2017, and follows some few high-profile gigs actually in 2016. And before we touch on some of those, these shows, Bonnie, have this special benefit seats in terms of giving back at the concerts. And forgive me if I'm not pronouncing it right, the Area Foundation, is that the name of it?
Yeah, it's ARIA, but it doesn't matter because it's just a great, it's a way of supporting, so many groups are calling up for benefit albums or benefit appearances or receptions, and we can't get around to all the different causes and be fair. So what we've devised in the last 10 years or so is a really great charity fundraising aspect that augments what we have always done, which was when I was younger, I could do 2 receptions a week after the shows for, special benefit seating. But now $1 of every ticket is donated, and then we do special premium seating that people get through the ARIA Fund or through my website or through various other ways of reserving high-end tickets. And the difference between the regular cost of the ticket and the higher tier goes directly to one of usually about 100 groups that we are carefully vetted in blues and music education and fair elections and artists' rights and things like certainly safe energy and no nukes work and, a whole host of other organizations that are working in great grassroots organizations to try to work for peace and justice in the environment.
And that's something for folks to consider when thinking about attending these shows. It's a great way to both be able to get up close and then also to be able to support great causes. And that's really been a hallmark of your life. And from the very beginning, practically, through certainly some of the things that you were up to last year as the Dig in Deep tour was already happening. And just dialing back a couple of months, Bonnie, one that touched on perhaps your deep spirit of activism, November benefit concert for Native Americans of Standing Rock. I was hoping you could perhaps, since it's radio, describe where you went to and any stories with tribal members or just that you generated on your own that you'd like to share.
Oh, I would love to be able to share it with folks because, the thousands of people, I think up to the point where they were actually starting to dismantle the camp when the really hard snows came and when the great windfall of the Obama administration before the end of his term, he put a stop to the furtherance of any kind of further construction until there could be an environmental review. They stopped the Army Corps from going forward, which of course has now been reversed by our new president. But at the time, this was right Thanksgiving weekend, and we had just finished a 9-month swing through the United States and Europe of the Big and Deep tour, and Jackson Brown and Joel Raphael and Jason Mraz and myself and some local Native American artists as well all participated in a concert that Thanksgiving Sunday. But the day before, when we all arrived on Friday night, we had meetings and plans for, delving up interviews and how we were going to spend the next few days before the show. Saturday was a beautiful, picture-perfect day in the 50s, and we had been expecting snow, and it was just an amazing visit to the maybe 8,000 or 9,000 people camped out in yurts and all kinds of different temporary and more permanent structures. And we were given a wonderful ceremony. We brought gifts. We were given gifts. We met with the tribal elders. I think there was over, someone said at one point over 300 different tribes were represented. But the main leaders of the groups that were there, we met for strategy meetings and talked about how they were what it's been like for them and how they're, a lot of the funds from the concert itself went to pay for, we showed up with like 400 blankets that we had purchased. And I know Jane Fonda was just there right before we were there, and she had purchased, thousands of pounds of bison meat and had purchased Mongolian yurts for the ever-expanding population that was growing. So the atmosphere was unbelievably positive and spiritually aligned, and an amazing bit of cooperation and cultural, so many different branches of our culture, whether they're young people or middle-aged people or people from all around the world that came in support. And on the way that next week, before they were going to close the camp down, was 400 members of the long robes, which is what they call the clergy. They were on their way for the big showdown, and I think over 4,000 vets were on their way to stand on the front line with especially the Native American elder women that were right in front of the bulldozers and the I don't know if the Army or the National Guard or whatever they were going to have, but the police locally that were sitting there with rifles 24/7.
It was quite a scene. It didn't look good on TV. That was something else that I was certainly raised. My mom had just a hugest respect for Native Americans and for what they had been through and the loss of all of the land and so many other issues. Were there any kind of, when you're looking at what's happened, because as you've mentioned, things have changed politically, and it appears that pipeline is going to go through now. Do you have any plan to go back and resume your efforts in drawing awareness to their cause?
Absolutely. I mean, I do a lot of interviews as my tours go on, and we're heading down after you guys in Hawaii. We're going to New Zealand and Australia, and I've just spent the morning talking to them about what is afoot for all kinds of different plans for protecting the earth and protecting the water and trying to undo what's being done in the next month. So Standing Rock, I'm hoping in the summer tour in August, we're going to be coming through and doing something in northern Minnesota and then playing in North Dakota again. But, at the moment, we're just sending funds and sending as much support as we can to the folks there are still some people that have been moved to a legal, quote unquote, other part of the territory that's away from the actual drilling. There's a very nearby camp, and that is still, there's a lot of people still camped there. So it's the ongoing support of the legal efforts to try to undo it and reinstate the environmental and the tribal concerns for sovereignty and for violation of their sacred lands and their burial grounds and the rights to protect their waters. So we're just trying to head off a disaster here, but for the time being, they're going ahead with construction, I think.
That's a good way of putting it, heading off a disaster. And you kind of have a history of such activity on your own part. The activism and music kind of intertwine. They both, from researching you, have deep roots in your life. And I was wondering if, on the music side, if you could explain the impacts of how the background that you have with a Broadway musical star as a father, a pianist as your mother, how this contributed to the woman that we know and are so privileged to have in our lives today.
Oh, thank you, David. Well, I was raised by a family that had become Quaker after both sides of my folks that came from more strict kind of Scotch Presbyterian and Methodist backgrounds. And after the Second World War, my uncle, who was active in the American Defense Service Committee, which is kind of the Peace Corps, conflict resolution, great work all over the world, arm of the Quakers, they decided to become Quakers, and that's how I was raised, was being, that our job here on the earth is to try to help alleviate suffering and injustice and to try to appeal in areas of conflict where people would tend to go to war, to try to see if there could be some sort of common ground and conflict resolution that was aiming towards respecting the other side and tolerance. So even from the time I was a little girl, we were involved with fundraising and going to talks by people from different lands and the Hiroshima maidens that were there during the attack. It made a big impression on me, as did collecting money for refugees all around the world. So it was just something, working for peace and justice. And then as the 60s unfolded and the ban the bomb movement and the civil rights movement, my folks were active in that, and they took us to marches. And then I went to high school and college and became very active, as the rest of the world did, especially in America, to try to stop our involvement in Vietnam and to try to level the playing field for both men and women, for the equal rights and the beginning of the feminist movement, the second wave, and, of course, the ongoing civil rights and anti-war movement. So it was just part of the way I was raised. And the music, as we all know, from the 60s, whether it was Bob Dylan or Joan Baez, Pete Seeger, but, so much of the rock music of the day was also reflecting those social movements. So I was part of that big wave in the 60s that grew up active, and I've stayed that way ever since.
You most certainly have, and that's fascinating. So your parents, from what I gather here, they adopted the Quaker culture as something they wanted. And it was the same with my mom. She was raised as a Jewish American young lady and found this on her own. And when I was just way too young to understand, we'd be attending these events. And as a child, it was kind of difficult for me because as you know, there are these moments where it's just silent in there for hours and hours, sitting there thinking in these gatherings, these Quaker gatherings. When you look at the impact of that now, all these years later, do you credit that as really that was the cornerstone of this mode of giving back that you have adopted and maintained?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was the humanity, the aspect of justice and peace and honoring that of God in every living thing that was really embedded in such a great way that the whole principles of what Jesus was really about, but also about all the other traditions of Buddhism and wonderful spiritual leaders and traditions all around the world, what we have in common. Everybody, the golden rule and being loving and promoting love and peace and honoring tolerance for others' opinions is such a root part of my childhood, and I think it is such in the true teachings of almost every religion around the world. So these jihadist, fundamentalist sects that think that it's our way or the highway, and that they have God on their side or we have it on our side, it's just the root of a misunderstanding and taking us down the road of war since the beginning of mankind. So it's just something that seemed to make a lot of sense, and also being able to use the gifts and the blessings and the privilege that I have to be able to give back. I'm not here to become, the queen of the world and make as much money as I can and spend it on both stuff. I think it's really great to see people banding together to try to make the world better.
And you have employed your skills in quite a way. And you mentioned a little bit of your progression in life. I can imagine for a while I lived in Boston, so I really enjoyed Harvard Square as a very special place to go and spend time when I was there. And so I'm thinking of yourself being in Cambridge, particularly the energy of that place during your Harvard Radcliffe days. That had to be a heavy dose of influence on you, both the culture of performance, which is there in the square, but also the activism, which is so rich there too.
Oh yeah, the anti-war movement was just raging. I think in the Boston area, in the '67 when I was, '68 was my freshman year. I mean, there were demonstrations all the time, whether it was Harvard Square, whether it was in Boston. I think there was over 300 colleges in the Boston area, and they were all had very active and, healthy exchanges for different strategies. But we were swept up in the national and international fight against the Vietnam War. So I was proud to be. It was an unbelievable time of feminism growing back to the more natural lifestyle, brown rice and people eating, or the beginning of the organic movement, the equality of women. It was just that's why I chose to go to college in that area, because it was just so much more fertile than Los Angeles, where I was raised.
Right. Yeah, you kind of went to ground zero, it seems, for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, Berkeley was my other choice, and there was certainly a lot, and still continues to be a lot going on there all the time. So, there were hotbeds of activism, and the Democratic conventions and all of that were just really, it fired up people in a way that I think they're being fired up now. It started with Occupy after the Great Recession, and not going after Wall Street or changing what was wrong, or the stolen elections where nothing was done. So the system is broken, and whether you're on the Trump or the Tea Party side, or whether you're on the Bernie side, there was a tremendous movement, especially among young people and millennials, towards activism. And what's happened in this election is we've woken up. Nobody can be complacent. So we may not have any strategy that will be determined for a while, but the resistance is you could see from the Women's March that I was lucky to participate in San Francisco. I mean, it was a phenomenal worldwide event, and I think people are going to be not complacent anymore.
That's a good call on your part, Berkeley. Definitely. As I was saying it, thinking, well, there was sort of the parallel to Harvard Square, which would definitely be Berkeley. And you're right. It seems like there's a lot of juice that has been created through what can only be described as no pun intended, an unprecedented time in our political political lives.
The original spelling.
Right. Exactly. You did mention the no nukes in there, and as you're talking about the things that are happening today, a lot of people trying to rally behind causes. Part of in the way I was introducing you, part of the way that you're known to so many people, and certainly when I tried to dissect your history, there's this, you've got the activism, you've got giving back through benefits, you've got giving back through guesting on other people's records. So two tenets of your life really have been this benefit thing and guesting with others. And I was hoping before I let you go to just touch on some of those. I was looking at trying to get the chronology of the concerts, and an early benefit one that I can see is 1979, the Muse concerts, Musicians United for Safe Energy, and undoubtedly there could have been ones before that, Bonnie. Forgive me if I don't have them down, but Jackson Browne, Bruce, Tom Petty, Graham Nash, Doobies, Carly Simon, Gil Scott-Heron, God bless him, James Taylor, others. Do you have memories that come to mind of those very famous No Nukes shows at Madison Square Garden?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, of all the things I've been involved with, I have to say those 5 nights and the Battery Park rally that was done at 1:00 on that last day was 250,000 people. It was unbelievable, and broadcast on public radio all over the country. And those 5 nights, I mean, we started out with one night, and people kept saying, well, let me be a part of it. And, the Doobies and Bruce Springsteen had #1 records, and there wasn't any MTV, and Jackson Browne had huge hits, and James Taylor and Tom Petty. And so many of the bands, CSN, there was no other way to see them. There weren't videos. So the fact that we were filming this for a big feature film and intersplicing the musical performances with really cogent documentary footage that we were showing, and having speeches during the concert that were just, nice and short but to the point. But it was really the precursor to a lot of the fundraising concerts that have happened since then, the Live Aid and different concerts that have been such successful fundraisers. But the No Nukes concerts were just revolutionary and artistically bands playing with each other, and the lineups were so inspired, and the atmosphere backstage and in the audience was just electric. And we knew we were part of a huge movement. And ironically, 3 Mile Island, it had just happened.
Right.
And really, a China Syndrome movie had just come out, and the whole world was really watching about what America was going to do. And there have not been any new nukes built for the 30 years since that time, not just because of our concerts, but because of the coming together of everybody realizing the folly and the danger. And then when you look at you can go and see what's going on right now with the huge boom worldwide for solar and wind, and the cost coming way down. Even China has it decided, they're leaving us in the dust as we pick up coal and dirty fuels again with the Trump administration, which there's going to be tremendous pushback on that. What we can do is just keep supporting legislation and policy that will promote safe energy. And economically, they don't have a chance of competing with that.
And you mentioned the Trump administration. Ironically, among your other sort of interesting gigs that you've done to try to spread a hand of peace to others, I guess, to describe it, Soviet-American peace concert in Moscow. Any memories?
Oh, yeah, that was in '87. There had never been a big outdoor rock concert, and Bill Graham, the great legendary rock impresario that sadly passed away way too young, not long after, we brought James Taylor, the Doobie Brothers, myself, and I'm going to say who else came. Santana. And we all flew over there on a charter, and we played as the culmination of the Soviet-American 6-week peace walk, filed into, and all the Moscow kids that bought tickets, all the folks and fans that had never seen American artists before, filed into the stadium. And Bill Graham they wanted to have the audience way, way far back by the soundboard, halfway, leaving the front half of the soccer stadium free from, so that there wouldn't be riots or whatever. I don't know what they were afraid of. And Bill Graham basically drew the line in the sand and said, we're not going to go on. And there will be a riot if you don't let these people move closer. So there was a big showdown, but we went ahead as planned, and they filmed it, and it was on Showtime. It was a big special. I wish they would make it commercially available for folks. There's probably bootlegs around, but it was a fantastic bunch of days that we were there, and just a fantastic opportunity to give those folks a slice of the kind of music they just never got a chance to hear live.
In just 1 year after the passing of Bill, it was right around your birthday, too, November 8th and 9th, 1992, you, Jackson Browne, CSN, and surprise guest Jimmy Buffett played the Hurricane Iniki benefit concerts, Blaisdell Arena. First night, Graham mentions it was your birthday, but you ended up working rather than taking the night off. That was promoted by the late Tom Moffett and raised over $500,000 for victims of the hurricane that hit the islands in September '92. Any memories of that?
Oh, that was a great event, and it was followed the next day or within 2 days of actually playing for the folks over on Kauai, which I had vacation in the islands since growing up in California and living there most of my adult life. That's where I go, is either Maui, Kauai, or Kona, or whatever the different islands are. I've been to most of them, and many, many times, and the devastation after the hurricane, to be on site and play outdoors in the field with all of those so much devastated on the island, and have that be broadcast locally was a wonderful thing to be able to do, as well as raise the funds in Honolulu. And you guys are certainly in the path of some of that extreme weather, and I have to hand it to you. I mean, we've had some epic rain the last couple of months, which has alleviated our drought a little bit here in Northern California. But I'm really glad that no matter what the Trump administration says, or the people that are climate change deniers, the science of it and the reality of the catastrophic weather that's happening everywhere, and the climate refugees in Sudan, and the impact of rising sea levels is going to be affecting all of us. So, those of you guys over in Hawaii that live there, I know you're already very well aware of the impact. So we'll just keep banding together and making the sensible arguments, and see if we can't get people to get out and vote more next time, so we can get our policies changed to recognize the change we need to make for the environment.
That's a great message. Very good message. Can't add much to how well you sum that one up, Bonnie. The guesting highlights. Do I have a moment to ask you a few questions about some of the guesting?
Sure.
Okay, just double checking. So, and I'm not going to mention them all, because that is, you may be, if Guinness Book of World Record was ever to tabulate a person who may have guested on more other people's records than anyone else, I'm going to go out on a limb and say for sure they would be considering you if you are not the person.
Well, I've been around a long time, and I do a lot of different kinds of music, so a lot of my friends have guested on my records, and we've done a lot of different collaborations. But go ahead. So you probably cherry picked a few of your favorites. So I'm happy to.
Less about that and more to see what they meant for your life. It was more when I was looking at Sippy Wallace in '72. Is that the first time that you sat in on a recording with anyone else?
Oh no, I mean I'd have to go look back at the discography, but Zippy and I were touring together for about 15 years before she passed away in the late '80s. So I guested on her Atlantic record, and she and I did a live radio broadcast from a PBS, of course, public radio station
Right.
here or it was KSAN, which is almost like FM, which was at the time a revolutionary station in the history of freeform radio. We did a live broadcast from a club here, and that was one of our favorite duets. But Jackson and I had done a lot of different radio shows. Little Feat and I had done radio shows. There's a classic bootleg of one with John Hammond and Lowell George and myself from a Long Island radio station that came out. So a lot of our duets were done at Christmas shows or different benefit concerts that people recorded and that came out later. But officially, I think I haven't looked at my discography lately, but I know on the website my staff worked really hard to get decade by decade list all the benefits we did and receptions, and you can go to the activism site, the button on my website, and then the discography one. I really all I can think of is how many have meant so much to me. My duets with my dad in the mid-'90s, and I've done 3 or 4 with B.B. King over the years. And Mississippi, I wanted to do a duet with Fred McDowell, but sadly he passed away before my second album. So I'd be hard pressed to say whether Willie Nelson or B.B. King or Aretha Franklin were my favorites, and Ray Charles was right up there. So I can't even say to the fans what, in case you're wondering what it's like to be able to duet with heroes that you just admired your whole life. It's just an unbelievable honor and a great joy.
Oh yeah, I mean the names are, you've named a bunch. I mean John Lee Hooker. I mean I can imagine it'd be very hard to separate. Leon Russell, Bob Seger, Don Johnson. Even that one seems a bit incongruous in the listing.
Oh, he was. We had the same manager. I was actually one of the producers of the No Nukes concerts that went on to be executive of Warner's and Atlantic Records. Danny Goldberg. He was the one who coordinated the Miami Vice soundtrack, and he was also my manager. So it was. We became friends, and Don said, "Come and sing this duet." And I knew he had sung with the Allman Brothers, and he was a great guy. So we had a really fun time. He picked some really good people to guest on his record, Whoopi Goldberg and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Ron Wood and myself. So I went, for a TV guy, then they usually rag people for doing records. He's got some credibility in his choices, I think.
No, he does, and I know that about him. He's a very cool dude with a lot of musicality. And Jackson Browne, one of the very first for every man. I mean, it's a long time back, and this became really a lifelong friend. How can you explain how you developed the bond with him?
Well, I opened a show for him in 1970 at the Jabberwocky in University of Syracuse, and we just, the next day we met for breakfast, and he was a fan of mine, I'm a fan of his, and I made my first album not long after it. We've just been like brother and sister in both causes and music ever since. We've done hundreds of shows together. Including
your first Hawaii show. It was November 27th, 1974. Bonnie Raitt, opening act for Jackson Browne, Waikiki Shell, under a moonlit night. You received a standing ovation from the appreciative crowd, and then during Jackson's encore, you returned to the stage, joined him playing Big Boy Pete, it says here, but that was your first gig here with him. So, and obviously somebody you've had, and he was on board just recently at the Standing Rock shows, correct?
Yes, and I think last night he might have played, either 2 nights ago, he's over at the benefit for the Sava organization with Wavy Gravy and Ram Dass over in Maui.
Yep.
I would say that on the planet Earth, Jackson Browne has done more benefits by 10 than anybody else living or passed away. I mean, the guy is just the Energizer Bunny for being able to manage a very, very busy life and still be always there on the ready, bringing his guitars and just being there for everybody. So Jackson and I finished a 50-city tour. My first national tour was 1974, and we, for our very last uh, date, we did Honolulu, and everybody stayed on vacation. So it was like the last night of camp. It was sad, but it was joyful, and it was a beautiful, beautiful night, as I recall.
The last night of camp. I like that. And finally on the guest thing before we wrap it up, some of the cats who have passed on who are on here are sort of amazing. I mean, it's a stunning list, and like you said, Jackson, I guess he would have a similar kind of list like you. That was a good point. But Stevie Ray Vaughan, some real nice work with Stevie. There's John Lee in there, BB you mentioned. Any of these cats who are no longer with us, that when you reflect on that, not only getting to record it, but I mean, obviously you spent some personal time around them too. Any reflections there?
Oh, well, John Lee and I were very good friends since I started out and used to play blues festivals in the early 70s. And I just always adored his music, and we just hit it off personally. And so it was really fun when Roy Rogers, is the legendary slide or solo artist, not the cowboy, he put together, along with Mike Kappas, they did this wonderful record called The Healer, which won the same year that I won my first Grammy. That afternoon, John Lee and I won our first Grammy for I'm in the Mood. So to be able to be reunited and celebrated on our first collaboration together, and that record had so many great duets, and he went on to do several other albums and collaborations, and so really set the standard with that whole duet thing that Ray Charles and different other people have duplicated over the years. But John Lee was so beloved by so many people, and we became wedded, really. We did a lot of benefits a lot of different blues shows after that, and different tributes to him in particular. And there's a great documentary about him that I get to participate in. So John Lee's a special one for me. Legendary Ruth Brown, the rhythm and blues legend that really built Atlantic Records. She and I toured together with another legend, Charles Brown, not related, but the two of them were really pinnacles in the terms of bridging the 1940s to the 1950s and 60s soul music. Really, that bridge was Ruth and Charles. So those two have passed on, but I was just so thrilled to be able to have them on my live road tested album back in '95, and we toured together quite a bit. And, BB and I have done a lot of stuff together over the years, but I'd have to say between him and the great Ray Charles, who probably had more of an influence on me as a young woman when I was 12 or 13, I just loved Ray Charles, and I was given a box of 12 albums of his out of the blue from a family friend. And, when you're 12 or 13, you don't usually have access to records like that, and it just probably had more influence on me as a singer and a phraser and a musician than any other artist. So to finally be part of his record right before he passed away was a great honor.
Right, 2004, Do I Ever Cross Your Mind? That was the only one with him, correct?
That's the only time that I actually got a chance to meet him, and we sang together, and then I lucky to be able to pay tribute to him that year at the Grammys by singing that song with Billy Preston, who's since passed away.
Yeah, and Billy was fantastic too. But Ray, did you tell Ray that as a child, when you were so young, that you had been given that gift?
Yes, I did. I said, you really changed my life. I mean, he and Aretha to me are the two most important influences I have musically, and I've told Aretha that as well, and I've gotten a chance to duet with her, and hopefully she'll be with us many more years.
You make me feel. Yes, you have. You've been with them both. Final question. And you usually politics not a topic I'd bring into an interview, but you've mentioned his name a number of times. And funny enough, you recorded your Bonnie Raitt and Friends in 2005 at the Trump Taj Mahal. I actually saw Santana there with my parents in 1990, so I have my own memory of being there with my mom and dad. Did you meet the future president there that night?
I did not. I don't think he spent a lot of time in Atlantic City. I mean, VH1 is who came to me and said we want to do a live concert with some special guests. So that is where they had a deal with the Trump Hotel. I don't think it had anything to do with affiliation. But I actually met him at one point. We were on David Letterman at the same time. So I sat in the adjacent makeup chair before the show taping, and he was very, he was a nice guy at the time. Who would have thought?
Right. I mean,
in our wildest dreams, every morning I wake up and go, is this really happening?
Right.
And sadly it is. Sadly it is. But whatever side you're in, the system's broken. We're going to fix it. So let's just talk about fair elections and transparency, and we can get democracy working again if we keep journalism healthy and available, and we get an informed populace that's active and probably angry and fired up. So let's just stay fired up and get into the solution and change the things that need to change.
It's going to be great having... Say again?
Oh, nothing. I just was on my soapbox. I was stepping down.
Well, it's going to be great.
Okay.
It's going to be great having you back in a place where no doubt you got a strong connection. Band member who lives here some of the time, bassist Hutch Hutchinson. I guess it's sort of like going home for him when he comes to Maui, right? He's still there most of the time.
Yeah, he's there a lot of the time, and we're out on the road a lot of the time as well when a new album is out. So it'll be great. I have such great fondness and great memories since the early 70s of being on vacation and playing great shows in Maui especially, and Honolulu, our main gig. So thank you to all the fans out there that are going to come and see us. I hope you love the show.
I hope they do too. Really, really appreciate it, Bonnie. Thank you, Bonnie. I appreciate your time
too. My pleasure. Hey, thank you for doing this and doing all that research. Wow, I'm honored. Aloha, this is Bonnie Raitt. Don't even think about touching that dial. You're right where you should be. We're enjoying the show with our friend Dave Lawrence. Aloha, this is Bonnie Raitt, and you're in a great place, tuned into my friend Dave Lawrence. It's All Things Considered on member-supported Hawaii Public Radio. HPR is a nonprofit radio station, and thanks for giving them a helping hand.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, and I hope.
All right, Dave.
Hope I can see you when you're in town, and just do keep in mind if you ever have a chance to do anything where you give visibility to the poaching crisis affecting elephants and rhinos, they could really, really use an advocate with the power that you bring. They're in a desperate situation.
Thank you. I know they are. I'm aware of that situation, and it's just soul sickening. So thank you for mentioning it, and I know there's people that are aligned with that particular cause. So it's just one of those ones where we all have to spread ourselves. As these issues come to light, there's many more than we can focus on. And be a spokesperson for. Sometimes you have to pick your fights and narrow it down just to be more effective. And the one, like the Safe Energy movement, is sort of my go-to one where I have to, as many different groups appeal to me. But the rhino and elephant situation and poaching in general is just so horrific. So thank you for reminding me.
Just trying to speak for them because I know they have a hard time reaching people. So I'll give you a big hug. I hope I get to see you in town. Thank you so much for all your time.
Dave. Thank you. So thanks to you, too, and I look forward to seeing you as well.
Be safe.
Have a great day.
You too. Aloha.
Aloha. Bye-bye.